Okay, welcome everybody to our October 2025 Symbiota Support Group meeting. Um, Today we just have a few announcements and then we'll pop into our agenda for the day. Should be pretty short. First of all, thanks again to those of you who were able to come say hi at Botany. We had a great time seeing a lot of our wonderful collaborators there. And that was during the period of the outage, so it was actually kind of convenient where we could reassure everyone that the portals are coming back. Lindsay was going to be at the Geological Society of America meeting. That's in mid-October, so just a few weeks from now. So if you have any other questions and you happen to know anyone or are going to this, then hit her up.
Yeah, I'll just add we'll be at the spinach booth this meeting. So we don't normally go to GSA, but we're rolling out some new functionality related to fossil collections. And so I'll be there with the Paleo Data Working Group. And so probably don't have too many attendees from here, but I'd be really excited to see you. So if you are at the meeting and you're in Texas, come say hi.
That seems like an actually fine time to go to Texas. Probably okay weather.
Right now, I checked last week and it was in the 90s. So it might be
Oh
kind
my.
of
Okay.
hot,
Well,
actually.
hope springs eternal.
Mhm. Oh,
And go ahead, Lindsay.
yeah, I can make this announcement too. So the Ecdysis Steering Committee is looking for material sample beta testers. And so material sample is a module that has to be turned on collection by collection. And they've been working to I should let Christy in because this is relevant to Christy. The Ecdysis Steering Committee is they've worked to set up some control vocabularies for this module that have to be set up on like a portal by portal basis. And so they'd like to have that tested before they like roll it out officially. And so if you use Ecdysis and this might be something you could help them with, just reach out to our help desk and we can set you up with that. I'll link in the docs an example of a record where a material sample sorry, not in the docs, in the chat. I can't speak today. In the chat, a record where this module has been enabled so that you can see what it looks like. And then I'll also add the link to the material sample Symbiota Docs so that you can see like where those instructions are too. I think that's it for that slide.
Great. Yeah, for additional context, material sample is an extension of the Darwin Core Biodiversity Data Standard that's generally used for subsamples of a specimen, largely like DNA or tissue samples that are taken off of a specimen, and then they may be sequenced or something. And it's in wide use by the National Ecological Observatory Network or NEON group, but there's a couple of other groups that have been using it as well. The tools in Symbiota exist. They are not fully honed and work perfectly, so that's why you probably haven't met tons of people who are using that module. But it's with its increasing use, we're seeing improvements in its, well, we are able to do some improvements to the code for that. So that's just some background on that. Okay, and then we hope that you'll be able to join us next month as well for Symbiota Support Group. We have a really exciting topic where Frank Bungartz and collaborators are going to be talking about some cool developments that and tools that they were able to create with the global TCN, that's the lichen and bryophytes thematic collections network. So tune in, normal time, normal place, but we're going to have a guest speaker talking about these cool new tools. Okay, some kind of community updates about what's going on in the Symbiota land. All of the Symbiota portals are back online with a few exceptions. We retired one portal, the EcoFlores portal, which was just one of many SciNet portals. And since it's accessing the same data, the folks who were leading that portal said, yeah, because the data is still accessible, they can just access it through, for example, the Consortium of Midwest Herbaria or the Consortium of Mid-Atlantic Herbaria. So Portal is gone, but that does not mean any data is gone because it was sharing the same database with a bunch of others. The Madrian discovery portals are not yet up either, but those do share the same database with other portals. So again, no data is inaccessible, just a front end currently doesn't exist. As you hopefully heard a couple weeks ago, we rolled out a new batch image uploading uh, protocol. It also uses Globus, but it uses Globus in a slightly different way than our previous batch uploading workflow. And the documentation to this does not exist on our Symbiota docs since hosting images with the Symbiota Support Hub does require like a discussion, hey, you're putting these on our servers, and eventually there will be a fee for um, hosting your images on these servers. So that's why it's not publicly available. But that does not mean we won't give it to you. Like if you just send us a help desk email, then we have had that conversation basically, or we will have that conversation over our help desk email. So just let us know if you need access to that or if you have any collaborators who need access to that. Related to the migration of all of the data from ASU servers to KU servers, actually, most of your images currently live on ASU servers. We were able to reinstate that image server, and that greatly accelerated the ability to get the images back online. But we are going to be moving all of those images from ASU servers to KU servers at some point in the future. The way we're planning to do this is a way that will not cause any downtime to the images, so they will continue to be available here. We will copy them over here, and then we'll just remove access to this, and this will continue to exist at hopefully the same links. So we're hoping not to have to change the links to your images again. That's the plan, but we'll keep you guys updated if anything changes. And then another critical announcement that so you have been probably experiencing some slight portal performance issues. And one of those we think was triggered by the downloading options being pretty slow and at least inefficient. And one particular function was causing those downloads to be really slow and to back up the servers. And that was the population of the associated occurrences field. This is how you would get data about linked resources, so like associated occurrences and associated URLs, basically like reference links to other things. So we made a temporary change in the portals that will prevent, or that will just mean that associated occurrences doesn't show up in your downloads when you download records. But we're hoping that there are modifications that we're making to the downloads tools right now that are going to make the downloads overall more efficient. And so we're planning to implement that or reinstate that old functionality in 3.4. And we're hoping to get 3.4 out before the end of the year. So this is, again, just a temporary change to downloads. And if you have any immediate needs for the data that you normally would download through the associated occurrences field, just let us know. The data still exists. They're not disappearing. It's just they're not showing up in downloads. And we can get that data for you. I see Rick asked whether Scan has come back online. So Scan was managed by the shoot, I forget the name of the organization. But their portal was technically on ASU hosted servers, but not managed by the Symbiota Support Hub. And so it was affected by the downtime. However, they had a scheduled retirement of the portal for the end of July, at least on ASU cyber infrastructure. And to our knowledge, they were going to set up the portal on another infrastructure. However, I think what happened is they ran out of funding and could not keep it up and running. So it is currently not up and is not scheduled to come back up. Anyone who is live managing the data has generally moved to Ecdysis. And then snapshots are largely already published to GBIF or published in some other way. But if you know of any data sets that are like seemingly lost forever, then I would get in contact with the scan crew and see if they can put like an archival copy up on some repository. So that is the news about scan for now.
All right, thanks.
Okay, on a happier note, I don't know if y'all have noticed a new functionality that has been rolled out. I think it was rolled out in 3.3, but there are some configurations that need to be made per portal for it to actually be in effect, and that is the ability to look at US county boundaries in a map search. So for portals for which US county boundaries are relevant, we have implemented this, and I'll show you an example. So this is in just the map search, and if you go up to the layers in the top right corner, you'll see there's a couple of layers that are available to you. Or maybe just one, depending on the portal. This is CCH2. And if you click US counties, then you'll see the county boundaries.
Oh, cool.
So this only shows up in the map search tools. It doesn't show up in like when you're in an occurrence record and you open up the map. That's not there yet, but we're hoping to roll it out to that soon too. And then, so this tool is pretty flexible. It just uses what's called GeoJSON files, which are just geographical shape files, such that you could put like a bunch of layers on a portal if you like have access to setting up that portal in that way. And we were able to do that in a cool way, thanks to help from UC Berkeley, because they have these cool Jepson ecoregions based on the Jepson flora. And so this is another cool like layer that they've been able to put in the CCH2 portal. So if you have other layers that are of importance to your particular taxonomic group or your region, and you can find them as GeoJSON files, then we could potentially put those layers in your map search for your portal. So keep that in mind if you have any map search layer needs. You cannot search per like section of the layer, that you can't just be like, click on this and search only that. But it does, still give you a visual so you can see where things are in different parts. Okay, so that is it for announcements. I'm going to stop sharing real quick to see if anybody has any questions or needs clarification. All right, trucking right along then.
Maybe one question, but this is back to the material sample. And so I don't want to divest too much energy into that. But in our case of the herbarium, we have a separate fruit collection. So I guess that maybe is considered a subsample, but there's no really extra preparation per se. So I, for some reason, thought there was a better way to record that because, I mean, right now in the record, we will put, pine cones stored separately in fruit collection. Okay, I know
Mhm.
those aren't fruits, just let me go. And eventually, of course, we photograph the specimen, and then someday, maybe, someone could go through and photograph all the fruits, but
Mhm.
would have separate barcodes, same collection number. So is this something that would do well under that material sample, or is it better just to use some other aspect of Symbiota to keep those kind of connected? I mean,
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what we generally recommend is treating those as separate occurrences because they're basically the same thing as a botanical duplicate. Like if you have, one branch of a plant and one branch of a plant and they're on two different sheets, like that's the same thing as one branch and having a cone. So we would probably say make those separate records and then just link them using the linked resources tab to say like, hey, these are part of the same individual or they're part of the same collection.
all righty. I sort of like that better, although I'm not sure I consider the same definition of duplicate and occurrence analogy, but I'm happy if I don't have to start a whole new record for a material sample and that we can just link resources. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And a good example of this is, for example, the California Botanic Garden. They created an entirely different collection for their xylarium because they have like wood specimens. And that's how they've chosen to manage it. You don't necessarily need to make a brand new collection for your different types of specimens. But you can see some examples of how they have linked those to the other like specimen sheets by searching through their collection. Gary asked, can you view county lines on a checklist map? And I don't actually know the answer to that question.
Yeah, actually, I'm looking at a checklist map that I just created over the weekend, and among the layers, there isn't one. But I think it would be a really good idea to have one because, like if you have a state checklist, it's a good idea to see what specimens or how many records are in a given county. And this could give a really nice visual, I would think.
I think that checklist map uses the exact same mapping function as, or similar, like the same module as the one in the occurrence editor. And so probably when we make that change to the occurrence editor map, it's going to be reflected in most other maps. That's my guess, at least. All right, well, let's chat about our new Symbiota Docs. Okay, so Symbiota Docs, as you hopefully all know, is our central documentation website where you can find help and tutorials for how to use specific functions in Symbiota portals. And in this last year, we did a kind of revamp of Symbiota Docs to make it a little bit more usable. So I'm going to talk about why we made that change and then just kind of walk you through what it looks like now and hopefully recruit you to help us out with a few things relating to the docs. So we decided to revamp the Symbiota Docs because for several reasons. One of them is now this new Symbiota Docs is living in our new Symbiota organization. Previously, the Symbiota code was in a organization belonging to Arizona State University. Now it's its own independent thing, so it's not necessarily related to one university or another. But the main reason why we wanted to make these changes is we now have the ability to version our documentation. So rather than having a page that says, well, in 3.1 it looks like this, in 3.2 it looks like that, in 3.3 it looks like this, but then we made this change in 3.4, you can just open up a version of Symbiota Docs relating to the version of Symbiota that you're currently working in, and just see the documentation that is pertinent to your version of the code. So I'll show you what this looks like. Here is Symbiota Docs, the new version. And I'll put a link to this in the chat. And up on the top corner or the top menu, you can see that there's a pull down that says versions. It's going to automatically lead you to the latest version, which is generally what most of your portals are going to be working in. But if for some reason you're working in a portal in an older version of the code, you can go to 3.2 or whatever version you're working in. 3.2 is the oldest we currently have, and look at the documentation relating to that. So that way you can see all the screenshots that actually pertain to you instead of seeing an older or a newer version than what you're looking at. This new Symbiota Docs is based on a actual software documentation suite called Docusaurus. And because of that, it actually has like documentation specific features and tools, such as an actually really nice search capability that is a little bit more intuitive than the previous search bar, at least in my opinion, because you can start with, a um, keyword, and then you can say, okay, well, am I looking at the images or other media? Is that what I think I want to look at? Do I want to look at like the general user guide in making checklists? So it gives you a slightly more helpful result there. And then you can just click on any of these pages and it will take you to that particular article. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through Symbiota Docs as I kind of started. So here we are at the beginning. And it should look very similar to the old Symbiota Docs, except for on the home page, it doesn't have those little tiles that tell you which guide to look into. Instead, it just shows, it gives links for which guide you should go to. But then all of the guides are listed on the left. So the collector or observer guide, this is for people who are using personal observation profiles. User guide, this is for people who have a login, but they aren't necessarily the collection administrator or editor. Editors, that's for anyone with editing privileges in a collection. Collection manager, that's anyone who has administrator permissions in a collection. And then Portal Manager Guide, this is for anyone who has super administrator permissions or is otherwise interested in learning more about kind of the broader or how Symbiota functions on a broader terms. So this is where you can find information about, for example, the geographic thesaurus and the taxonomic thesaurus. And this is also where there's information about how to edit the taxonomic thesaurus, add things, etc. So those are kind of more specialized permissions that are not necessarily given to editors or administrators just with those collection permissions. So to look at any of these guides, you can just click on them and then it will give you a drop-down list of all of the articles in that particular guide. And you can tell which articles have sub-articles based on the arrows. And then probably my biggest complaint is that if you've opened a lot of things, it starts to be a little bit overwhelming with how many things you can see. But you can always go up to the guide level and just click on the arrow and everything goes back away. So if you need to re-navigate to something else, you can just close anything that is pointing down caret, and that will simplify your options like so. In each article, you will see hopefully an info summary at the top of it. Then you'll see instructions or other information pertinent to that tool. There are some linked Symbiota support group recordings and other short tutorials as is useful. Of course, there's plenty of screenshots. We try to be as visual as possible. And one of my favorite new functionalities is on the right side, you can also see an automatically generated table of contents. So when you're looking at any certain page, you can quickly look at the contents of that page without even having to scroll. And you can say, oh, I'm particularly looking at the data usage policy. If you click that, it pops you down to the useful part of the page. And then if at any time you want to change back or go back home, you can just click the Symbiota up in the top left corner. If you need to change the language that you are reading in, then you have your options up here. And you'll notice that not everything gets automatically translated into the other language. That means that we don't have a translation file for that particular file. So there are many things that exist in Spanish for the editor guide. However, there are many pages that don't yet exist, and we're still working on getting those translations. But as you can imagine, translating however many pages we have, 200 pages or so, is a lot of work. So that kind of leads into one of my help requests later on. But for the sake of keeping everything, in the guide, so we're not like leaving things out for people who are trying to read it in one language versus another, you'll still see all of the articles in both languages, or at least when you click on Spanish, all the same guides show up, but the ones that there's no translation for will just be in English. Okay, any questions about the new Symbiota Docs so far?
Yeah, I've got a question. I'm just looking at batch editing. One thing I would like to do with with the checklist, and I don't know if this can help, but I would like to find a way to select a number of specimen records and then link that batch to a checklist. Is that possible?
Yes, you'll have to do that through the checklist functions though. So let's see if we can find that article in Symbiota Docs. So that would be under our user guide because that's where all of our checklist information is. So if I go to checklists, then you want to add a bunch of vouchers to a checklist, right? I think that's what I understood. So you're adding a bunch of vouchers.
Yes.
So you'll probably need to use the Manage Linked Voucher tool, and there is a tutorial video here. I'll go ahead and send this your way.
Great.
And that has this batch function built in where you can do a query based on the limited number of fields, but you can do a query and then batch add whatever number of taxa you want. I mean, vouchers you want.
That's perfect. Great. I will check that out. Thank you so much.
Great. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, the checklist documentation, I would say, is super helpful because being like one of the very first things that was ever developed for Symbiota, like Symbiota was actually first developed to make checklists rather than to be a collection management system. It's like one of the oldest user interfaces, which means it's kind of clunky sometimes, or maybe not intuitive. So definitely check out those checklist tutorial documents for help navigating those. All right, that leads me into the last section of our kind of presentation, which is a call for help. So we need your guys' help to improve these documentation pages, and also to just make sure that we haven't missed any links anywhere, and I will talk about that. So the first way we need your help is to report any old links. So if you run into any links to the old Symbiota Docs site, even if it's like on a third-party website that someone's like, refer to this, blah, 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 on the old Docs site, let us know so that we can either change it if it's a link that, belongs to us or a resource that belongs to us, or we can get in contact with the person who maintains that resource so that we can make sure that they have the most up-to-date links too. Right now, the old Symbiota Docs remains accessible. It has a little banner that says, hey, go to this new link. But that's going to go away soon. So we want to make sure that all of those links are appropriately pointing to the new Symbiota Docs. So keep your eye on that. And then make sure to update any links that you have on any websites or protocols or documents that you maintain, so that they go to the correct links and don't just go to a broken link. A second help or need that we need is your contributions and your edits to the documentation. If you run into anything that is confusing in Symbiota Docs or incomplete or just doesn't meet your needs, let us know, because there's a lot of documentation to focus on and we don't always have time to do a full audit annually of every single page. And so if you find any gaps, we want to hear about it so that we can make those changes as soon as possible. Send us an email at our usual help@symbiota.org. You can also directly in Symbiota Docs, say you find something on, this page that's confusing. If you scroll all the way down, you can see this edit this page link. And that's going to take you to a GitHub link to that specific page. Now, this gets into your comfort with GitHub. And if you are comfortable working in GitHub, this is where you can actually make the changes in the file and then submit them as a suggested change or a pull request for our team to look at. Otherwise, if you're like, yeah, I don't really know how to edit this particular format, because if I go to edit, it will show up in this fancy Docusaurus version. Then you can just say, hey, on this page, send me a link, send me a screenshot, highlight a thing on your screenshot. I think it should say this. Perfectly great. We love that. And we'd be happy to change that on your behalf. We would also love, love, love if anyone can contribute translations. So you can either submit translations via GitHub, and we can teach you how to do that whole workflow. It's not that hard. Or you can just send us your translations as your document. That's perfectly fine. If you're like, I really wanted this page in Spanish, but it's not in Spanish yet, but I have a friend who speaks Spanish, so here's a translation of that page, then we would love to get that into the portal Spanish version or what other languages you have. Diego, probably the easiest way to find out which pages haven't been translated yet is to just go to the docs and view it in Spanish. And then anything that doesn't have a Spanish header, that just means that it has not been translated. Alina, yeah, we could do Google Translate. We'd prefer if there's someone at least who can double check it afterwards. Like if you can do Google Translate and then, I mean, you speak Spanish, so you could check it, make sure it makes sense, then that's good with us. Okay, any questions or comments about the new Symbiota Docs or any of our updates or announcements? All right, well, I'm going to stop recording and open it up to any other questions, troubleshooting, etc.